This is Khan, a true gamer with top-tier skills. Unfortunately, he talks too much, so he gets slapped by monsters before he can use his abilities. Suddenly, he meets a girl named Flona. She comes to find Khan to ask him for a favor. With his love for girls, of course, no guy would refuse. He then sits down to chat with her and lets her know that he is a responsible person, not just in games but in real life too. So she immediately reveals that the favor she wants to ask is in real life. He is excited and happy because he thinks that after nearly 20 years of being single, he can now experience what it's like to have a girlfriend. She hopes he can help her because if he can, she's willing to give up something very important. He then asks her where she wants to meet him, and she says they will meet soon. Suddenly, Khan falls into another world where a swordsman is on a mission to protect a princess who is running away. 2 modern tanks are chasing them and deploying soldiers to surround their group. The swordsman and his men stand up to protect the princess, but the enemy commander has already taken care of all his comrades, leaving only him and the princess. He knows the swordsman is the sword Saint Lane, and out of respect, he will let him live on the condition that he hands over the princess. He refused and prepared for a one-on-one duel with him. Unexpectedly, Khan and his chair fall straight onto the head of the enemy commander. Lane quickly takes the princess away, but she wants him to save Khan too. So he turns back, throws a rope, and pulls him along. Khan is then constantly bombarded with questions about who he is, where he came from, and what the light he appeared in was. But he is the one who needs to ask where this is. He hears an unfamiliar name and thinks he might be dreaming. A little girl comes up and punches him to make him realize this is not a dream. He's about to hit back when Lane threatens him because this is Princess Pyria. He doesn't believe the princess is this violent little girl because the princess looks more like the girl over there. But that's Maria, the princess's maid, and she's not a girl but a trap. To make sure, Maria lets him feel down there, making him lose all faith in life. He's fallen into a confusing situation and met some strange people. Meanwhile, the blue-haired guy from earlier has returned to report to the commander about the mission's failure due to being hit on the head by a stranger. But he tells it as if he was caught off guard, which is why he lost. So the commander wants to see who could catch the blue-haired guy off guard. During this time, Khan learns that Lane is escorting the princess to a wedding with a neighboring country to form an alliance, and it seems the group attacking them are rebel insurgents. He thinks the princess is older than him, but the little girl is only 8 years old. He thinks this is illegal, but the princess says she's okay. They still want to do something to repay Khan, so he decides to ask them to buy him a pair of shoes. The group then enters a town and goes to a shop to buy shoes for Khan. Since everyone is choosing ridiculous pairs for him, he boldly chooses the most expensive pair in the store, and the pair he gets looks quite rugged. Suddenly, Lane senses someone following them and signals Khan to prepare to run. The group then runs into an alley and ambushes the 2 followers. The enemy then pours in, forcing Lane and Maria to stand up and deal with them, while Khan stays behind to watch over the princess. The group then follows Lane to the underground sewer and finds their way to the edge of the city. However, this place is strange as there are no guards. Khan doesn't want to waste time, so he runs out to check and calls the group to follow. However, as soon as they come out, the enemy commander appears. He is Eric, and he's stronger than the guy Khan took down earlier. Maria and Lane stand up to face him. He confidently deals with Lane and activates his sword to knock him and Maria down in one strike. Khan is also struck down by his sword. He's disappointed because he thought Khan would be a little stronger. He then approaches the princess, but Khan continues to stand up without giving up. Admiring his perseverance, Eric decides to use a stronger move. But as he stands preparing his move, Khan approaches and kicks him straight in the groin, causing him to pass out and allowing the group to leave. Lane is surprised that he could take down someone as tough as Eric, but Khan finds it normal. He also steals Eric's fancy sword for future use. Princess Pyria decides to appoint Khan as her knight from now on, and he's not allowed to refuse because Lane is ready to send him off if he disobeys. But he's determined to refuse at all costs because he doesn't want to be a servant to this little girl. A few days later, Eric wakes up and remembers being kicked in the groin by Khan. The doctor then comes to deliver the bad news that they had to remove one of Eric's testicles. Hearing that he now only has 1 jewel left makes Eric very bitter, and he swears to take revenge on Khan. Meanwhile, Khan is still grumbling about not wanting to be a servant to this little princess, even if it's an official order. He thinks his task now is to find a way back to his old world. But Lane points out that he doesn't have any clues about that yet, so he might as well go along with their group. However, the princess wants him to serve her and she'll provide for his food and clothing. He still refuses because he has his own self-respect. No one stops Khan from leaving because Lane still wants them to continue to the capital and avoid the rebels by any means possible. Eric has now returned to the ranks, and everyone believes he lost because he was played dirty. But the more he stands listening to his subordinates talk, the paler he gets. He then walks away, leaning to one side, which looks very funny. Back to Khan. He's sitting listening to music when suddenly Maria comes to find him. It's unclear whether to call Maria he or she. Specifically, Maria wants Khan to go with her for a while. Maria asks if Khan feels uncomfortable going with them, and he says he doesn't exactly hate it, he just doesn't like being seen as a servant. He is then led by Maria to the carrier pigeons, but here they are enormously large. Maria wants to call for more help to make it easier to reach the capital. Meanwhile, Eric has gone to meet his superiors, and he knows he must quickly capture the princess and also reclaim the sword from Khan. But he's confident Khan won't know how to use it. Khan and Lane have then started researching how to use this sword. He notices the sword has a trigger and below it is a ball. This is used to absorb and transmit energy. He tried pulling the trigger and swinging the sword, but it's no different from when he normally swings a sword. But Khan knows this stone is very valuable, so he wants to remove it from the sword and sell it. Suddenly, the princess comes to find him and asks him to follow her for a while. They climb a watchtower, and the princess shows him that this peaceful scenery is what she's protecting. If she can't participate in the marriage, there's a high risk of war breaking out. Therefore, she's willing to sacrifice her him H to protect this whole world. So she wants Khan to continue helping protect her. But the problem is that he doesn't have any special powers. The 2 times he saved her were just luck. Suddenly, at this moment, Eric brings an entire tank to attack the city to force Khan to show himself. The blue-haired guy is now also with someone else looking for Khan in the small alleys. Khan has now joined forces with Lane, and they know that if they run away now, this town will be in danger. Suddenly, the group has a bomb dropped right at their feet, so they have to run away and unfortunately end up standing right in front of Eric. He aims the cannon at Khan, but fires off target onto his subordinate on the rooftop. He knows he missed because he's off balance. He fires a second time and misses again, so Lane decides to clear the way for Khan to charge in and fight. He believes Khan will somehow be able to use this sword. He then charges up, dodges bullets, and slashes one of the tank's wheels. Khan has activated the sword in some miraculous way and then charges forward, but the sword suddenly turns into a stone club, causing him to lose balance and fall. He picks it up again and charges forward, swinging the club to destroy Eric's tank. Eric still isn't defeated and steps out to fight him one more round. Khan realizes the way he walks is the consequence of his kick last time, so he stands still and lets him lose balance and miss. Khan decides to cure his balance problem by smashing his other side, causing him to be in pain and pass out on the spot. Eric's subordinates once again decide to retreat and promise Khan they'll meet again. After that, the Khan group also left, and he decided to help the princess's group, but in return, they had to find a way to help he return to him. Old world. She agreed and told he that he needed to go to the capital with her, which was not far from where the Khan group was. A girl had been observing and following the group. She sent her flying squirrel or flying mouse to approach Khan. Khan then wondered if he could return when he reached the capital, but that was a matter of luck. However, that place would surely have some clues. The group then encountered the flying squirrel mouse, and both Lane and Maria found it cute and wanted to keep it as a pet. But Khan firmly refused and argued that they shouldn't disrupt the natural order like that. Wild animals should be left in their natural environment to survive and grow stronger in the wild. He came up with a bunch of reasons to prevent them from adopting it and then chased it away. That night, while Khan was sleeping, the creature found its way to his room. In the morning, he was startled and shouted when he found the squirrel mouse had come to him. Although he tried to shout and chase it away, Maria extended her hand to welcome it and decided to keep it at all costs, regardless of whether Khan agreed or not. He continuously painted the worst scenarios of keeping this creature, but Maria still refused. Lane then told a legend about a hero. The story of how famous that person was contrasted with how nonsensical it seemed to Khan when he heard that the hero liked cats. In short, Lane also agreed to keep the squirrel mouse. With 2 against 1, the princess also sided with the other 2. Khan absolutely disagreed and vowed not to coexist with this animal. He then went out to buy some hunting equipment because he didn't believe that a top server player in the hunter category like he used to be couldn't hunt a small animal. Lane asked what he was planning to do, and he just said he was going hunting for a bit. He then carried a net into the room to find the squirrel mouse, but was confronted by Maria pointing a gun at him, asking what he was planning. He then went to prepare poison to trick the squirrel mouse, but the princess caught him and wanted him to taste it if it wasn't harmful. The princess then had to gather the group and ask why Khan hated this squirrel so much. So he had to confess that he was allergic to pets, but everyone saw that he wasn't affected when he was near the squirrel mouse. Everyone then wanted him to stop making excuses and tell the truth, so he had to tell his story. When he was on a rainy day, he found 2 abandoned cats on the street. He was kind enough to take them home and raise them. However, everyone wondered what tragedy had occurred at this point. Did they get sick and die, or did his family object and not allow him to keep them? No, he hated them because he had raised them so much but never received any affection from them. Everyone thought this might be an opportunity for him to change his perspective. He wasn't sure if he could really change, but he still agreed to listen to the other 3 and extended his hand to make peace with the squirrel. But it immediately bit his hand, making him extremely angry and grabbing a mace to fight with it. He wanted it to disappear if it lost, and if he lost, it still had to disappear. Lane and Maria wanted him not to be so petty and to set proper conditions, so he agreed to let it stay if it won. He then continuously swung his hammer and destroyed the floor. Everyone wanted him not to be too rough, but he didn't listen. He was scratched once by the squirrel lunging at him. He kept attacking but couldn't land a single hit. Just when he had cornered it, he missed again because it jumped up and kicked him in the face, knocking him unconscious. He then lost and had to accept letting it follow the group. He still vowed to kill it if he had the chance. The journey afterward was not very smooth as the squirrel mouse and Khan constantly quarreled with each other. Everyone now thought of one thing: they had to name this squirrel mouse. Everyone came up with silly names, so Khan argued that naming should be done carefully and properly, and above all, it should only be 4 syllables long. If no one could come up with a proper name, he would call it Pet. No one objected much, and they continued on their journey. While Eric was leading the blue-haired person back to his mansion, Eric reunited with his fiancée there, and she was very sorry to hear that Eric had been slandered on the battlefield. If she knew that her fiancé had just lost 2 more gems, who knows how much more sorry she would be. When Eric went into the house, his fiancé, having heard that Eric was wounded, wanted to apply medicine to his wounds. He was afraid that if he revealed now that he had lost the most precious thing, he would lose his fiancée forever, so he decided to hide it at all costs. However, his refusal made her somewhat sad. Later, as Eric was about to leave with the blue-haired person, the butler noticed that Eric's fiancée seemed sad about something. Not wanting to leave his fiancée alone, Eric invited her to join him in the carriage for sightseeing. Sitting in the carriage, Eric constantly thought about what would happen if he told the truth to his fiancée. Surely she would be disappointed and abandon him. While camping by the lake, his fiancée asked Eric how many children he wanted in the future. But hearing this made Eric's heart ache even more because he wondered if he could even have any children in his current condition. Eric didn't want to talk about this, but his fiancée thought Eric meant that children were a gift from heaven and they couldn't decide for themselves. Eric, feeling a pang in his heart, left for a moment to ask heaven how he should answer his fiancée. Noticing Eric's strange behavior, his fiancée asked the blue-haired person where Eric was wounded, but the blue-haired person didn't know either. The blue-haired person also told her the name of the person who had caused Eric's predicament and why Eric was defeated. That evening, upon returning, Eric met 2 acquaintances, Limpus and Ella. Hearing about Eric's injury, Ella gave him a box of traditional medicine that only needed to be taken orally. Eric happily accepted it, which made his fiancée even sadder. The blue-haired person asked the butler about these 2 people and learned that they were distant relatives of Eric. Limpus then told the butler to prepare a feast for dinner that night. But the ultimate purpose of Limpus and Ella was more sinister. Specifically, the medicine given to Eric earlier was a stimulant, and Ella would have the duty of seducing Eric to become his bride and take over the family's reputation, while Limpus would take advantage of this to approach Eric's fiancée and marry her. Later, Ella brought the medicine to Eric and lured him to lie on the bed. She then wore only her underwear and began to wrap herself around Eric, but Eric pushed her away. However, Limpus rushed in and started making a fuss about this. Eric's fiancée ran away in sadness, while Limpus didn't believe any of Eric's excuses, saying that only if that part was weak would it not be affected by the medicine. Hearing this, Eric felt a pang in his heart and decided to challenge Limpus to prove his innocence. Limpus accepted the challenge and arranged to meet Eric in the forest the next day. Limpus had anticipated this, so when leaving, he told his sister the reason he was confident in challenging Eric was because Eric valued honor while he didn't. The blue-haired person overheard this and reported it to Eric. Eric had also suspected this, but still had to fight to find a way to apologize to his fiancée. The next morning, Eric and the blue-haired person met Limpus and his sister in the forest. The blue-haired person blamed this situation on Limpus's setup, but since he admitted to it anyway, Eric had to accept the deal and fight. Eric then wanted to fight Limpus, but Limpus called out a muscular man to fight in his place. Not only that, but the muscular man also called out more accomplices, and so on until Eric had to fight 7 men. However, Eric was not intimidated and charged forward, knocking each one to the ground with a single blow. But Limpus then summoned a demonic chicken to fight Eric. Eric was gradually losing strength and couldn't hold out much longer, but his fiancée and the butler arrived to cheer him on. Empowered, Eric continued fighting, but suddenly the chicken ran towards his fiancée, causing Eric to awaken some kind of power to rush over, intercept, and slash down the chicken. Eric then approached Limpus to ask if he admitted defeat, and Limpus conceded. But as Eric turned away, Limpus kicked him in the groin. However, a person who had lost everything no longer felt pain as he once did. Eric defeated Limpus and approached his fiancée. The butler wondered why Eric didn't feel pain when kicked in the vital spot, to which Eric claimed he had trained for it. The blue-haired person had to admit and called Eric a man of steel. The next day, Eric and the blue-haired person set off to return to their mission. Eric now happily accepted medicine from his fiancée to make her feel better and promised to return someday. Eric and the blue-haired person then headed to a hot spring to cleanse their bodies. The rebel council now hears news that the princess is being protected by a powerful warrior. This warrior is very mysterious and can use energy weapons. They have no information about this person, so they decide to send someone to deal with the situation quietly to avoid Eric finding out. They fear Eric's honor would be damaged if they spoke up. They then went to the prison and released a cannibal to hunt down Khan's group. Back to Khan's group, he now know the princess's plan is to take he to the capital and find a way to help he fly up to the Sky City, as that place might know something about he falling from the sky. From now until then, do him. Bodyguard job for her well. The cannibal has spotted the group and is following them. They later arrive at an inn and stay there today. Khan asked Lane how long they still have to travel, and he said 2 months if there are no setbacks. Khan complains because it's too long, but he wants he to focus on protecting the princess, as she trusts he very much. Suddenly, Maria runs in to report that the princess has reached that time. Khan doesn't understand, but is dragged along to see. Everyone comes to look, but he see the princess looking completely normal. Lane had to pull he outside to prevent he from angering the princess. He wonder about the princess looking completely normal. Then Lane asks if he noticed the tuft of hair on the princess's head. He did notice, but before they could explain in detail, the princess complained of hunger and both quickly ran to the kitchen to find food. Despite Maria taking out all the food in the kitchen, it still wasn't enough. Maria then told the chef that they would rent out the entire place for a day and the inn shouldn't accept any more guests. Maria also asked Lane and Khan to go buy more food. As soon as they left the inn, the cannibal approached. Lane and Khan have now bought food and returned. Lane explains that the princess is in her hyperactive period, and although he has never seen her during this time, he's heard from others that it's terrifying. They need to avoid upsetting her because once the third tuft of hair stands up on her head, everything will be over. When they return, Maria has cooked a lot and asks them to bring it to the princess. As soon as they bring it in, she demands something bigger. Khan places a plate of food down and it disappears instantly, so he has to go back to the kitchen. Maria's hands are numb, but she still has to keep cooking. Khan keeps bringing food up and it keeps disappearing, making him start to grumble. The second tuft of hair stands up and Lane starts to worry. The princess now forces him to say meow after every sentence. Although Lane knows this will make him look like a clown, he doesn't want to risk his life, so he tries his best to meow. She then makes Pet act like a bird, so it starts chirping and trying to fly. Maria has cooked so much that she's going crazy, but Khan now thinks the princess is just growing and eating a bit more, so they don't need to indulge her too much. He decides to handle this himself. He goes to the princess's room and says he understands her current situation, but she shouldn't trouble others. She needs to help the other two, and the first thing is to help him carry these dishes down to the kitchen. Maria and Lane are shocked because the princess actually helps Khan. After she returns to her room, the other two advise Khan not to do such reckless things again if he doesn't want to die. He then wants both of them to go rest and not worry. The lights are out and the cannibal finally acts. He sneaks in and discovers someone in the kitchen. He goes to check and sees Maria still cooking there. He rushes to stab her, but Maria throws a ladle of soup at him, causing the meat skewer to fall on his face. Flour then falls on his head and Maria, angry, goes to beat him up and demands he leave immediately if he values his life. He fearfully runs away and then decides to change his target. He caught Lane's eye and he angrily strode over, demanding that he leave immediately if he didn't want to die. But he thought that warning was just a threat, so he ran away and then reached the princess's room. He knew the princess was in bed, so he approached intending to assassinate her. But the third tuft of hair stood up and the nightmare truly began. Khan was going to the bathroom when suddenly that guy rushed over and clung to him. He begged Khan for help, so Khan thought he was hired by those two to scare him about the princess affair. Khan then followed him to the princess's room to find her, but he didn't see her in bed. He went to the window to check and saw that guy had been frightened unconscious by the princess. She then toyed with Khan and lunged at him. Khan saw the 3 tufts of hair and knew what had happened, so he jumped out the window to escape. The assassination plan had failed, and no one ever saw that assassin again after that. A few days later, the group arrived at a hot spring town. This was the largest hot spring area on the entire continent. Khan didn't seem to like this place much because he came here with kids and men but no girls. He asked Lane about services for men and Lane pointed to the area across the way. Lane then led them to the hotel where he usually stays when visiting here. The staff guided the whole group to their rooms. Khan wondered if Maria would bathe in the men's or women's section, but Lane informed him that Maria and the princess already had bathtubs in their room, while he and Khan would be in this small room and use the outdoor bath. Khan eagerly jumped in, but Lane wanted him to sit still and enjoy it. He felt nostalgic because he had gone to a hot spring with his family once before. As he sat listening to Lane talk, suddenly his thing stood up. Worried that Lane would notice, he asked to leave early. He was concerned his sexuality was bending, so he had to find a way to fix it urgently. But he remembered Lane saying this hot spring also helps awaken him. Suddenly he saw Eric walking by, so he hid in a corner. He couldn't believe the guy he hated most was here, and since he had played dirty tricks on him twice before and made him lose 2 gems, he had a feeling he wouldn't be able to trick him again this time. He then ran back to the princess's room and asked to hide there temporarily, but the two inside were having too much fun to hear anything, so he had to go look for Lane again. But he had left the bath and Khan was sure he had gone to the entertainment area earlier. He then saw Eric coming in, so he had to hide. As soon as Eric entered, Khan noticed he was trying to beg the gods to grant a miracle for his brother to return to normal. It seemed pitiful, but oh well. Khan then ran to the reception desk and asked them to tell the princess and Maria to stay in their room at all costs. He then ran to the adult entertainment area to find Lane, but it was so big now he didn't know where to look. Suddenly, he saw some girls dressed as rabbits and realized Lane really likes animals, so he found a shop that he was sure Lane was in. He asked a passerby and learned that inside, customers drink while playing with cats. So he went in and indeed found Lane there. He told Lane what happened and that he just wanted to avoid Eric, not fight him. Suddenly Eric walked by again, forcing Lane to hide him. Khan then noticed his little thing had calmed down, so he realized it stood up because Eric was around. His body then suddenly started glowing, causing everyone to notice him when they returned. When they got back to the hotel, Lane wondered about his glowing, but Khan didn't know either. He just wanted to sleep first and figure it out later, but his body was too bright for Lane to sleep. Khan wanted Lane to just ignore